Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today for Affordable Housing Month, Silicon Valley, May 2021. We invite you today to grab any materials you might have. Go ahead and put your chat in the chat, your name and pronoun if you feel comfortable, and we'll be getting started. So today, just before we get started, we're going to be talking to you today about South Bay Community Land Trust. So what is a land trust? How do we build towards communities where everybody is safe, loved, and housed? My name is Laura. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I have lived and worked here on Ohlone land in San Jose for the past 48 years after our family moved here from Jalisco, Mexico when I was about 2 years old. I've been working in the domestic violence field for the past 25 years and working against gender-based violence, immigrant youth, and housing rights since my years at San Jose State. As a preventionist, the work I do in my community aligns with the values of love, community, and wellness. I became involved with the South Bay Community Land Trust at its inception and serve on the board of directors. I believe it is our responsibility as a beloved community to highlight the strengths of its members, those traditional given space, but most importantly, those that have been left out, made to feel othered or silenced. We know that housing is a human right and the reason I continue to do this work. So welcome everybody for being here, and I hope that we can mutually learn together today. As you see here on our screen, we have our agenda. We will be doing our presentation on just 101, what is a community land trust? We'll have some opportunity for breakout and group discussions, and then some time at the end for some questions and answers. We also want to let you know the goals of the session. So a basic understanding of a community land trust is around centering community and tenants experiences to deepen understanding of the 5 pillars of housing justice. We will reflect and integrate today's learning outside space to work in solidarity and contribute to communities organizing for housing justice. And we will provide an update of where the CLT is right now and how you can get involved with us. Before we get started, we'll do a land acknowledgement. We also want to set some norms to create a safe and loving space for all of us to be learning together, right? So before we get started today, we want to pause and acknowledge that here in San Jose, we live on the unceded land of the Ohlone and Muwekma people. We want to practice today recognizing the original caretakers of these sacred lands. Today, we recognize that the Ohlone people have never lost their connection to this land. We also want to recognize our elders, past, present, and future generations. Today, we recommit to continue or begin the work for some, dismantle the ongoing legacies of systems of colonialism, racism, and oppression by institutional settlers. Today, we also want to acknowledge interruption of how colonization imposed white supremacy on indigenous communities here and all over the world. The work we do in community then serves to change this and therefore honor and pause to recognize where we come from, right? And this will help us in the advancement and the creation of new systems for all without violence, which we know that we live in. And then finally, the set of norms to create a safe place. We know one of them that's very important to us is funds of knowledge. We know that everybody here on this call comes from a great understanding that this is a social justice issue. We want to learn from you, have this mutual space where we recognize that everybody is a teacher, everybody is an expert in their individual lives, and that hopefully together we can build community. We offer also a culture of consent, which means you are able to participate in any way that you can. If you don't feel comfortable, as we are recording, showing your face or your name, feel free to change that. And also waiting and asking questions, right? We may say things like CLT or use acronyms for certain things. Let us know if we can clarify something for you. And finally, just setting our intention for today's space. If you want to put it in the chat, what are you bringing into the space today? What are we creating together? And what do you want to learn? Is something you want to take from our time together? And so as we jump in to, what is a CLT, the next few slides here will help us put into context some of the factors that play in our city when it comes to housing, community investment, and then just the overall development here in San Jose. We begin by recognizing that we cannot solve our housing crisis without dismantling racial and historical policies and the laws that continue to affect us to this day. So public policy and racist ideologies have historically worked together to deny people and hoard property and wealth. We have this map, as you see on your screen, where it shows historical redlining, right? What is redlining? Redlining was a federal policy used primarily in the 1930s by the Federal Housing Association, segregated neighborhoods and led to the adverse possession, displacement, and disinvestment in communities of color that we see today. So if you see the map here, areas labeled A were all white Christian areas. The areas labeled B were high income areas, mostly white. C were mixed race, and the D areas were red. And all it took was one Black person for the area to be red zoned. So this was not just for ranking the neighborhoods into colors, but for specific reasons. If you lived in the red areas, you would be denied loan applications, which led the neighborhoods to be under-resourced, in every area affected schools, and just the overall well-being of a community. And as we see in this next slide, knowing these histories, right, these historical policies, knowing this data, but most importantly, sharing our lived experiences and testimonies is what drives this change in community. The South Bay Community Land Trust was founded out of the struggle and community visioning gatherings just like this one today, right? So the current movement and urgency from the city to create an anti-displacement strategies and community representation would not be happening today without the continued advocacy and activism and demand from its residents after public lands were sold to a private corporation instead of building something for and by the community. We continue to see development that puts profit over people again and again in our community. Here are some examples of development within the last 10 years. We see the construction of luxury housing, new tech corporations in our area, while the need and demand for more affordable housing continues to grow. In the 2020 report titled Ending Displacement in San Jose, a community strategy report, which we can share link to, you can read about what the Anti-Displacement Policy Network team collated in their report. In their executive summary noted the following: the issues that we're experiencing are, that we're hearing from our community, the same that we have found in this report, right? That San Jose has been shaped by racially restrictive policies, such as redlining, as we just mentioned, and also restrictive housing covenants, preventing people of color from buying homes or living in certain neighborhoods. The report also tells us that many of the neighborhoods that have suffered from disinvestment are now experiencing gentrification, displacement. This is according to research by the UC Berkeley Urban Displacement Project. So they outline some solutions, which are: one, decrease housing cost burden for low-income residents, decrease displacement from San Jose, decrease eviction, and increase new affordable housing opportunities. So more specifically, one of the recommendations was to support development and capacity building for innovative housing solutions, including co-ops and community land trusts. Today, we're going to share with you how this is a reality here, as the South Bay Community Land Trust is the first community land trust in the South Bay. We invite you today, as you join us, to hold space to think about solutions that truly seek to dismantle these legacies of racism, and think about how each of us cannot just see housing as a human right, but also as a responsibility we all have to our community and each other, and to ask ourselves, who and what am I responsible for? What people, what things, and what places?
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. That was great. And now, so that we know how dire the situation of housing is here, we want to showcase how the community is leading the movement for housing justice. People don't simply want a roof over their head or temporary solutions. They want homes that they can feel secure in, that they can create change from, and that they can build community in. Housing justice is not only about the houses, but the entire environment that people live in. Things like plant life, public transit, air quality, access to schools and grocery stores, to parks and playgrounds. Housing justice gives people the ability to focus on what matters to them, and here's some of the input that we received from the community through our outreach. One thing that people made clear was that CLTs are more than just a tool for development, but also a tool for preservation. People are interested in preserving buildings that already exist for multiple reasons. There's a lot of historical buildings that are very beautiful that people want to preserve, and it's also better for the environment to use buildings that already exist. Additionally, something people highlighted was that housing is crucial to community health. People controlling their own living spaces builds mental health. Keeping people's homes in the community, it reduces long commutes, which is good for their health and good for the environment. And the way we can develop things through the CLT can be more holistic than other kinds of development. We can do things like incorporate water and environment systems that the community can have control over. We can develop ideas that are new and come from the community, like the Mercado and things like community cooking classes. We can have things like child care centers that benefit working parents. We can have playgrounds. We can have greater access to public transit with things like grocery stores and farmers markets. And CLTs can be a tool for community building. When you work in a CLT, you'll get to know your neighbors better because you're working together and you're part of this sort of this project together. And it can be a space for healing circles, for people to connect with each other, to make art and heal collective traumas. And so there's a lot of benefits that the CLT can have for the community, and a lot of creative ways that we can do more than just house people, but instead create really lively and loving neighborhoods and communities.
Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you, Damien, for sharing the stories from the community. One way that the Land Trust has formed our goals and values is through thinking about housing in terms of the 5 pillars of housing justice. And these 5 pillars were first written in a report titled Rise of the Renter Nation, authored by the Right to the City Alliance. The link for that report will be in the chat. And what do we need to have towards building a safe community? So that's how these 5 pillars are kind of structured. So I'm going to go through them. So the first pillar that we have here is community control, which states that housing and land should both be owned by the community, but also controlled through democratic structures and processes by those who live there. The second pillar states that housing must be accessible and inclusive. So like we learned earlier in the slides that Laura was sharing, historically marginalized populations across class, race, ability, and gender have been disproportionately affected by housing discrimination, which we still face today. And these are things that must be really taken care of, and people facing this must be affirmatively reached out to and included as residents and participate in decision-making related to their housing and community. The third pillar is long-term stability and protection from displacement, because people's homes need to be protected from housing discrimination, market forces, and other things, predatory landlords, which all cause displacement, and changes in policy, government policy over the long term also needs to be looked at. The fourth pillar that we have is health and sustainability, which means that housing should foster healthy and sustainable communities. From interpersonally to structurally, housing should maximize the well-being of all residents. It should also center land stewardship in its ecological design and construction, as well as renewable energy and safe and affordable water and food systems. So that was kind of what Damien was talking about. Like, there's different ways. It's not just the housing itself, but it's also the environment in which the housing is built on. And the last pillar to discuss is affordability. Housing must be truly affordable, not just for one specific group of people or for one, margin of income. It must be truly affordable for everyone. So after paying housing costs, including utilities, internet, all of that, people should still have enough to cover basic needs, such that they can thrive now and throughout their life. So that's what it means by affordability. So what is a CLT? So after going through those values, in comes the CLT model. And the CLT model is what we have here at the South Bay Community Land Trust, a nonprofit organization led by the community that acquires land and stewards it in a perpetual trust for the benefit of low-income communities for generations to come. So this pie chart here represents decision-making as well as just input about housing in a land trust. So it's 1/3 of local experts, technical support, another third, the neighboring residents and larger communities to get that community input. And then the last third is residents of the CLT properties who are able to make decisions and have put their opinions and all of that into their own housing. Yeah. And this is a unique governance structure that ensures that all decisions are community controlled as well as community defined. So here's another visual to showcase how a CLT works. Basically, this is kind of based off of what's happening in San Jose. And this drawing here was actually made by one of our members. And yeah, so the first part of the process is a community struggling with rising housing costs, overcrowding, gentrification, and displacement. In this case, it could be the Google campus, it could be other forces coming in and buying land without community input. And then the second is community members working together to organize and form a community land trust. And so, like I mentioned, it's a nonprofit, democratically governed space featuring a board, equal parts residents of the CLT, members of the community, and housing experts and other advisors. And then the next step is that the CLT acquires land and holds the land off of the market for community to use for generations. And this land can be used for housing, green spaces, and many other community projects. So this slide is a little bit more information about the history of the South Bay CLT. South Bay CLT is part of a larger network of more than 20 CLTs in California. South Bay CLT was incorporated in 2019. And we're currently participating in a Silicon Valley Preservation Lab, which is a collaborative learning space that the Silicon Valley Community Foundation has put together in order to learn how they can support blossoming CLTs in the regions with building acquisition, so gaining more land. And the Preservation Labs is focused now on a project, and we would love to tell you more about it. So they actually awarded us a small grant of $50,000 for the organizing component of the pilot project, with the goal of identifying tenant communities and the first building for the CLT. So currently the two options are for a 4 to 25 unit building or possibly mobile home park. And the areas that we're looking for is in the downtown area or the east side. And yeah, so definitely feel free to email us or ask us questions about this. But the city of San Jose, is kind of really looking forward to working with us, I guess. But basically, we're also working with City Housing Department, Somos Mayfair, and other community stakeholders. So overall, just like in the 1960s, it took a broad-based coalition of peace activists, civil rights pioneers, religious leaders, and farmers to make the community land trust idea from concept to reality, and really glad to bring it in San Jose. Okay, so now we'll be going on to our break and to let you soak up and just relax from all the information that you heard. But when we come back, we'll be hearing another member of the CLT and actual technical advisor, Zach, who will be kind of giving us a preview of a future workshop. But what he will be talking about is more of the technical aspect of preservation landscape and CLT economics. So enjoy the break, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to what we have shared. Remember, you can always email us questions, and yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the break. So now we have a slide portion presentation from our technical advisor, Zach. So Zach will introduce himself and then let us know what he's been working on and tell us about an upcoming event as well.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And thanks for the chance to share some context about preservation, which is the model that the South Bay Community Land Trust has chosen to adopt. My work with the, excuse me for just a second, my dog is barking in the background. So sorry about that. So my work is to help basically support the incubation of the South Bay Community Land Trust, and we'll discuss some of the activities that we've been doing to get towards our vision at the end. But to jump into the slides, I first wanted to share, that preservation, as many of you may know, is a more economical model than new construction. Acquiring a building that already exists is just cheaper, and it doesn't cost as much as having to buy the land, assemble land, and then build with all the new materials and the cost, as we know, as high as they are in California for construction. And so we believe that more money should be allocated to what is the much more cost-effective model for affordable housing, which is keeping existing housing affordable. But the reality is that preservation is underfunded at every level, federal, state, and local. The city of San Jose, for example, has not traditionally done preservation. The state government has played a very insufficient role in supporting preservation, as has the federal government. And so what people all across the country in CLTs and other groups have been doing over the past few years is raising the importance of preservation, raising the cost effectiveness of it, and working to get the government to pay attention to this. And COVID has opened up a lot of opportunity around and access around this need. Additionally, increasing land prices make affordable housing development more expensive for all models. So a lot of times CLTs face criticism that it takes too long or that we're not achieving scale. But the reality of what we know is that there are no places where affordable housing needs are being met. And for folks at the extremely low income level, meaning 30% AMI, area median income and below, there just is a very insufficient number of affordable units. And we all know this because in our home communities, the wait lists for affordable housing are extremely long. And so the reality is that we need a real continuum of options for affordable housing, and preservation and land trusts are a necessary part of that continuum. And moving on next, unlike inclusionary housing, community land trusts can provide affordable housing in perpetuity. And so the model involves a 99-year lease that is renewable after the 99th year. But because the land trust in the community owns the land, they ensure the permanent affordability and through using resident self-management of properties, help to ensure that the housing remains sustainable, that it remains in good condition and can be passed on for generations. And luckily, even though the context for preservation right in San Jose across the country has not been great, because of the COVID pandemic, the millions of looming and possible evictions that are being faced across the country, more policymakers are beginning to pay attention and understand the importance of preservation. And we're seeing really amazing models of this, including the purchase of hotels across the country to house homeless people, longer term, and the purchase and acquisition of buildings in Philadelphia. Activists acquired over 30 public housing scattered site units. This is happening all across the country, and hopefully through the infrastructure bill, which is being discussed before the Congress right now, there are opportunities to fund preservation, including $20 billion through the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. There also is legislation in California at the state level that would help position affordable developers to better acquire foreclosed properties or properties that are facing foreclosure. And so the landscape for preservation looks bright. And we're hoping as a community land trust to get everyone invested in the necessity of this right in San Jose. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and like Zach said, we're doing great work and there's a lot of opportunities on the horizon. And so if you would like to join us, there are many ways you can support us. In the chat, I'll be putting a tiny URL link where you can add your email and such. If you would like to sign up for our mailing list or volunteer and think about what your role might be in our struggle to create housing justice. If you're a community organization, we would like to make connections with tenants or with landlords and assist identify properties that we could possibly add to the land trust, so we can have support and engagement in shaping policies that strengthen CLTs and collective ownership. If you're a developer, we need things like technical assistance. We're a very young org, and we need organizational assistance. We need with homeowner financial literacy for tenants. We need people with real estate experience. And we need opportunities to integrate the CLT model into your development project. And if you're a funder, there are lots of pre-development costs to obtaining and building housing. We have operational support. For example, this event right now is being put on by volunteers in our education committee. We don't make money from this, so we need funds for things like staffing. And of course, we need technical assistance, organizational experience, and real estate experience. And just like every other thing, we would love it if you would talk about us on social media or share some posts on Facebook or Instagram. And, just in general, get connected. We have email, you can DM us through any site you'd like. Yeah.
Great. So we have been hearing, we have been reading a lot of questions in the chat, and we want to get to those. But now we want to hear from you, right? We're going to invite you to share in your groups. One of our team members will put you in a group. This is an opportunity for you to digest this information with one another, condense any questions that you may have. And also, we are going to add a couple of questions into the chat to get you started, reflecting on what you've heard so far. So one of the questions is, what stands out for you as something that you can commit to standing in solidarity with our community? The other one is, what is something new you learned about the CLTs? And any questions you have for us, the ones in the chat, we will look those over. And if you have new questions, please feel free to jot them down. And we will give you, how much time do we have for groups? 10 minutes, do we think? Okay, so we'll do about 10 minutes, and then we'll give you a little countdown, and invite you to share out after we come back into the main conference room. So, introduce yourselves to the small groups and get those questions. We'll add the 2 questions to the chat. Okay, and we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Thank you for coming back, and we'd love to hear from you, either on some of the questions that we posed right before with the breakout rooms, or if you have any questions. I know there were some questions in the chat, so we would be, our team will take turns kind of answering those. But if there's something that has come up in your group that you want a little more clarity about, or if you have a question about, feel free to unmute yourself, and we can popcorn this and one of us can jump in and answer some of those questions for you. So who has a question for our group, or reflection? Could be a reflection as well. If not, we can get started with some of the questions that were posed in the chat as well. We can do that. So as a reflection, what have you heard that our community want? What stands out for you as something that you can stand in solidarity with? Anybody want to share how we can stand in solidarity with our community? Anything new folks learned from a CLT, or did you come into the space like, oh, I know all about CLTs, I know what they are, I know how to put one together? Is there something that we learned today that we can take into our community? Great. So some of the questions that were asked in the chat, maybe those folks are not back with us, or did not come back. There was a question about, how does CLT determine affordability? Is there a certain AMI, area median income, that CLT is serving? Does anybody on our panel feel that they can answer this question for our community today?
This is Sandy. I'm not on the panel, but can I take a shot at it?
Sandy, you are on every panel, and yes, adelante.
Basically, I mean, our inclination is to serve primarily what's called extremely low income people, because that's the community that's most in need, and that's where the housing shortage is the worst. But we've also learned in the process of trying to figure out what projects we can do, what projects work, that we're probably going to end up with kind of a mixed income grouping that'll include extremely low income, very low income, and possibly some moderate income. And it's all kind of complicated, and I think it depends how each project would work out. We're trying to develop a partnership with the housing authority so that we can use Section 8 vouchers, and that would help us to serve more extremely low income people and actually no income people. So it's going to depend project on a project by project basis.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. I would just add that as a South Bay CLT, we're looking to redefine affordability. So because right now, being tied to an AMI that is regional doesn't allow it to correspond to the actual community, the actual local community, specifically here in the South Bay, where we see such a large spectrum between low and high income. And so, like Sandy mentioned, this would be a basis by basis, and it would be, again, where we are facilitating that democratic process and community members are defining affordability for themselves. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandy and Jocelyn. Any other questions that have come up? Again, you can also, if you don't have the questions now, or if you're like me, at midnight, I'll be like, oh, I have like 5 questions and I should have asked them. We will share how to get in touch with us for sure. But again, if there's anything now, we're here. You have a captive audience that can answer questions. If not, we'll take a little pause here and go on to that last part of our presentation, which is how to learn more about the CLT, because today was just an introduction, right? How we came together, some of the history of the work that we've done with the community, some of the historical implications of why this is so important in our work. But on May 26th at 6 p.m., we will be having South Bay Community Land Trust number 2 is a community visioning workshop, part 2. We did one a few weeks ago. It'll be on Wednesday, May 26th from 6 to 7:30. We will drop the tiny URL in the chat. This is how you can register. So join us that day in imagining housing and development that benefits everybody in our community. This is a part 2. You didn't have to go to part 1 to attend this one. We will have interpretation available in Spanish and English. So if you'd like to reach out and invite other folks in the community. And then this is how you can get in touch with us. You can email us at southbaycommunitylandtrust@gmail.com. You have all of the other ways to get in touch with us as well. Facebook and Instagram. And in the chat, we just added that connection there. So please join us in a couple of weeks and take advantage of, and maybe if you have those questions that are brewing, bring them to that event as well. And then Corey was going to say a little bit about Affordable Housing Month, so inviting him into the space.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, one for introducing me and also just for hosting this great event. I've learned so much already today. I was hoping to learn something and I've learned way more than I expected to. This has really been wonderful already. And I'm looking forward to engaging and learning more about the work that South Bay Community Land Trust is doing. This is a really exciting time. So just wanted to introduce myself and say a little bit on behalf of Silicon Valley at Home. My name again is Corey Wolbach, he, him. I'm the Community Engagement Senior Associate for Silicon Valley at Home, SV at Home. We are the convener for Affordable Housing Month here in Santa Clara County every month of May. SV at Home is a membership-based organization dedicated to driving the creation of affordable housing for a more vibrant and equitable Silicon Valley. This year, the theme for Affordable Housing Month is Silicon Valley is Home. This month is dedicated to our community. You know, whether our families have been here for generations or we're just settling in from other parts of the region, the country, or the world, Silicon Valley is where we live. And we want all of our neighbors to have access to safe, stable, and affordable roofs over their heads. We invite you to register for and attend more of the events that are being held by ourselves and by our partners for the rest of the month of May. And if it's okay, I'll share a link for that in the chat, but it's bit.ly/SV Housing Month 2021. So I'll just share that so it's easy for you all to see. Also, again, SV at Home, we are a membership-based organization. If you'd like to become a member or just learn more about what we do and more of the broader efforts around affordable housing in Silicon Valley, I encourage you to go to our website and to learn more. So I'll put that link right here in the website. Again, thanks so much for giving me a moment to speak, and thank you everybody for coming. Stay engaged, take what you've learned here and keep doing more with it. And again, just want to encourage you to remind all of your neighbors that Silicon Valley is home. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Corey. And thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I know it's a long day. It's hot out there. It's the middle of the week, but thank you so much for joining this space with us today. Hopefully you got some information that'll, like as we said in the beginning, that will motivate you to get involved, either with us or somebody in the community that's doing this amazing work. And we will see you all on the 26th.
Thank you. Thank you all.